Hey guys, what's going on? It's Danny. Let me just start off by saying that this is not a comedy video. A couple of months ago, my grandma, who I call mom, but the internet kind of knows as Granny Sexbang from the Ninja Sex Party videos, celebrated her 88th birthday. And I thought it'd be really cool to interview her about her life because she's always telling me these cool stories about, America in the 30s and 40s and stuff. And it was meant to just be for the family, but it turned out so cool and so interesting that I thought you guys might appreciate it. So we're gonna upload it here. And what else? Oh yeah, it's a loose conversation and it kind of jumps all over to different places and topics. So you can check in the description. We'll put links in there for each topic of conversation if you want to skip right to that or you find a subject that you think is interesting. That's it. I hope you like it. It definitely meant a lot to me to do. See you later. So my name's Dan Avedon, and this is my beautiful grandma, Ruth Schwartz. And we were talking. You've been my grandma for 36 years now.
Exactly
as
right.
of yesterday.
Absolutely
Yeah,
right.
and one of my best friends too, frankly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and you've always told me stories about life in the 30s and 40s, and it occurred to me recently, like I was telling you, that there's not many people around anymore who can tell these stories.
Oh heavens!
and let alone people who have all their faculties, should I say? Because you're totally with it, and I love it. And so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit on camera and get some of your amazing stories down.
I'd love to tell you anything you want to know.
Well,
yeah.
All right. So we can start with the fact that I just found out that Grandpa Lou, your dad, my great granddad, who I never knew, made golf bags.
Right.
Which I had no idea about. And that's how he met your mom, right?
Exactly. My mother was his secretary, and that's how they met.
How
Fell in love and
salacious.
got married.
So she was younger, right?
Yes, she was 10 years younger than he.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they got married. She was 17.
Grandma Tilly was 17 when she got married?
Yes, she had her
my
first
God.
baby when she was 18. Helen, they were more like sisters in age
of course.
than mother and her child, yeah.
So if I had lived the life that Grandma Tilly lived, as of now, I would have an 18-year-old kid.
Exactly.
You've got
exactly.
to be kidding me,
exactly.
Mom. That's insane.
Exactly.
Was that normal for the time?
Yes, it was.
Wow.
Mostly normal, yes. People did get married when they were 19, 20, 21.
Right.
But if particularly young women, if they were past 21 and perhaps 22,
Over the hill.
old maid.
Really?
Old maid.
Wow.
Yes, indeed.
That's changed.
Yes, very definitely. But it took a long time because Helen herself, who
Right.
was the first child born
Right.
to my parents, she was 27 when she married.
Oh my God.
And, I mean, she was a lost cause.
Practically a grandma.
They thought she was an old maid at
Really?
27, yes.
Okay, so in the late 40s, that concept of you're an old maid in your late 20s was still there.
Oh, yes. Oh,
That
yes.
didn't change till what, the hippie movement of the 60s, like the free love stuff.
Well, I believe that's true. Yes, that hippie movement, and people were much more relaxed about relationships and everything. There was a complete change.
Right.
But just think, I met my husband when I was 20 years old.
Yeah,
I married him when I was 21. I was a baby.
that's crazy.
I was a baby. If you think of it that way, I thought I was all grown up and sophisticated.
Do you think
know.
you're old when you're 21?
Oh, absolutely. But I realized that I was young, had a lot to learn,
Yeah.
but I still made the most important decision of my life. It happened to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you boil a life down, there's just 2 or 3 things you got to get right.
Yeah,
And you got it.
Yeah,
Like
right,
you
right.
did good, Mom.
Right,
3 for 3.
Right.
So tell me, just because we're talking about Pop. Pop was Bernie, Bernard,
Right.
your husband,
My husband.
my granddad, one of the coolest, greatest human beings
Correct.
that I've ever met.
Yeah.
Let's say to ever walk the face of the earth. And so when you met him, he was. You were both scientists at the time, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I was working at Flower Fifth Avenue Hospital with my sister Helen.
Right.
She's the one who hired me. And we both worked for Dr. David Lair, whom she married later on.
Oh, yeah, Helen.
Yeah, Helen married
Did
Dr.
everyone just
David.
marry their secretaries? Is that just how it works?
Isn't that funny? It seems so. Well, when there's a close proximity,
Sure.
you get to be friends. And, of course, they say that's the best kind of marriage. If you're friends first,
Right.
and then you fall in love, it's fine. But I was
But you only
there.
knew Pop for like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Awesome.
Exactly true. And it's really amazing because we met under a very peculiar set of circumstances. I had a laboratory, and laboratories are usually very messy, a bunch of stuff hanging around, test tubes, all kinds of things. And my laboratory was very clean. I happen to be.
Right.
I don't
I
think
know.
I'm a clean freak, but I like things neat.
Definitely.
So I used to keep my lab very nice. And I came to work one morning, and there was this man. And to me, he was a man because he was 27, I was 20.
Right.
The guys that I was running around with were also 20 years
Right.
old,
Of course.
So to me, he was a man. He was sitting on my lab table, and he was smoking a cigarette. And I walked in, and people tell me I have a haughty look about me. I am not a haughty person.
So
But I
funny.
walked in, and I said to him, you see this laboratory, how clean it is? He said, yes. I said, make sure it's this clean when you walk out. He later said to me, I thought to myself, whoever gets this pill really deserves it. Those were his first
That was his
thoughts
first
about
impression.
me. Right, that was the first impression.
Oh my God.
And of course, at the time, I had a lab coat on, and,
Right.
and I used to wear these Oxfords, these nurses' shoes,
Yeah.
most unattractive. The next day, I came to work, and I was in high heels and, a nice outfit
Yeah,
and so forth.
yeah.
He noticed that.
Oh, of
right
course.
away, right. But that was the beginning of our meeting. And within a week to 2 weeks, we knew we were going to get married.
That's amazing.
Yeah, amazing. isn't it?
And so he proposed to you,
He proposed to me.
and there was no hesitation.
No hesitation.
Wow.
And that must have been in October.
Mm-hmm.
Thanksgiving was coming in November, and I asked my mother, or it might have been November that I met him. I asked my mother if I could invite him for Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
And she said, of course. And he came from New York. He had no car.
Right.
Took a cab, and he wore a hat.
Uh-huh.
The kind of Frank Sinatra?
Yeah,
hat.
sure.
And my mother was looking out of the window, and she saw him get out of the cab, and she thought, oh, he's so sophisticated. In New Jersey, we had cars, and it was normal and natural.
Sure.
So a cab was more of
Right.
an exciting
It's like a
thing than
limousine.
owning a car. My mother liked him the minute he stepped out of the cab.
Thank God, because you were already engaged, right?
Well, not quite.
Oh, okay.
Not quite.
Okay.
After we had Thanksgiving dinner, and it was very funny, and we had a wonderful time, my sisters, both of them, said, you know why you like him? I said, no, why? He's just like Daddy, was their answer.
Grandpa Lou?
Grandpa Lou,
Okay.
yes, and I was my father's favorite daughter.
Right.
Even if my sisters see this, they may object, but
They'll
the
know.
truth is
They'll
the
know
truth.
deep down,
Yes,
yeah.
they will know
Everybody
that.
knows
Right.
what the score really is.
And it turned out he was. He
Wow.
had the personality and the goodness and the kindness of
And
my
Lou-
father. I was unaware of it, but I suppose psychologically we don't know what makes us like one thing and not another.
Sure.
But I adored my father, and I kind of switched it to Bernie, I guess.
Right. And Lou liked pop.
Oh,
too.
very much.
Yeah.
Very much. As a matter of fact, when my father died, he called for Bernie.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. That makes me feel closer in a way to Grandpa Lou.
Really?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, I knew Grandma Tilly.
Right.
Grandma Tilly, she died in 1989, so I was 10.
Uh-huh.
And I remember her sweetness
Yes.
more than anything.
Right.
I remember we used to watch The Price is Right together.
Uh-huh.
And and she had these really gross biscuits at her house that like tasted like air. There was like no taste to them whatsoever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about. I hate them.
They're vile.
Right.
All right. Cool.
Correction.
I'm glad I'm not alone on
They
this.
probably had no calories. Maybe that's why they were around.
I mean, they were like rice cakes in disguise, but like disguised as like a delicious treat because they looked good. It was cruel.
Yeah.
It's strange, isn't it? How similar the setup is because you are to my nephews, Nash and Carter, what she was to me.
Correct.
You know, and even though, because I mean, talk about two ships passing. Pop died when Dana was pregnant with Nash.
Correct.
Dana's my sister, and he knew she was pregnant, right? Yeah, she told him.
No.
Oh no.
He. I don't even know if she knew at the time, but he was dying,
Mm-hmm.
and he said something about she's pregnant with a child, and I really don't remember whether she knew as yet, but he had not been told.
But she
and
definitely didn't tell him.
No.
That's
no,
amazing.
No, he just, sometimes they say people understand things that we have no way of knowing whether this really is the case or not. But he seemed to have realized that
That's amazing.
she was pregnant.
I do remember Dana did get to tell him because she told me he slapped his knee, which was the classic Pop way of saying like, all right,
Right.
he approved of the situation.
Right.
Because I remember, because you said you thought he might cry one tear when she told him, because that's what happened when you told him about Kennedy being assassinated, right?
Right, yeah.
And that's the only time you saw him cry?
Right. I, of course, was devastated when John Kennedy was assassinated. And I was in front of the television set, and Pop came home, the normal time, 6 o'clock. He walked in the door, and the first thing I said to him was, "Did you cry?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said yes, because I was ready to be very, very angry
if he didn't.
if he had responded in that fashion.
Right.
Because to me, for a man to cry, I think it's beautiful. That a man is able to.
I'm a blubbering disaster. You'd be so proud of me.
That he should be able to express his emotions just like anybody else. Why men are taught to hold all of this emotion in.
I'm sure it's the number one reason why men die sooner than women.
Yeah, you may.
Yeah, just trying to hold everything.
I
like
never
that.
thought of that, but that's quite possible.
It kills you to hold
Right.
in your emotions like
Okay.
that. It needs to come out.
Okay.
I've never seen my dad cry either. When his dad died, I saw him
Oh, yes. Yeah.
very slightly. He also grew like a little bit of a beard that time, and which I'd never seen before or since. So he was just clearly like in another
Right.
world. But like, yeah, very strange that I come from two generations of guys who did not cry,
Right.
and
Right.
but that was never an issue for me. I
Yeah.
was always like, I was always a really emotional kid.
Well, men, it's because of the mother that you had
Right.
or have. Thank
Yeah.
goodness. she didn't teach you to have those false values, because crying, why should that be the domain of women? That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, as good a time as any to say you done good with my mom. Because, I mean, like, well, yeah, because my dad was working a lot, even though I did spend a lot of time with him. But growing up, it was really you, my mom,
Right.
Debbie,
Right.
and my
Right.
sister Dana.
Right.
So there was a lot of female influence
Right.
in my life.
Right.
And I'd say to a degree, Dana was kind of, at least when we were kids, the tougher
Yes.
of the two of
Yes.
us.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
I think I was more like a little more solitary and emotional, and she was more like gregarious and kind of strong-willed.
She was Avi, in other
Yeah,
words.
she
Right.
was my dad,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And I took a lot more after Debbie.
Right.
Do you think part of that is because when one child is a certain way, the next one to create their own identity
I
will...
am a great believer in
Yeah,
that.
you think so?
I definitely do. I think that one of the reasons my son Bruce is
Right.
the man that he is
Right.
because his sister, who was 20 months older, was exactly the opposite.
Right.
And I think in order to make yourself heard, that you automatically, without realizing it, and actually because you're a child,
Yeah.
but that you get the message. If I'm the same, then I'm going to be just the second one, you know?
Yeah.
So I have to make myself different in order to be heard. I believe that.
Can you describe your feelings when you heard Dana was pregnant? Was it just kind of like, this is what happens?
Yeah. I know. Somehow I'm not that kind of emotional person, you know, where most things happen because they're happening in order.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You grow up, you get married, you have children, and then
You kick
you
it.
die.
Yeah. Well, you vacation for about 40 years, let's hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but everything to me is normal.
I mean, we've talked about it 100 times. I've asked you if you're scared of dying, and you're like, nah, not really.
No.
And
I have one feeling about dying, that I'm going to miss being alive.
right.
You know, I'm anxious to see what's happening with your work.
Right.
All of your accomplishments are so wonderful for me, you know, that it's going to a movie.
Right.
You know,
That's awesome.
I'm enjoying all of the great things that are happening to you, that are happening to Dana.
Yeah.
You know, that's marvelous. Even now, Bruce, at 61, I think that's how old he is now.
Yeah.
If he has a new project in mind, I'm very excited. I want to know what the next step is. Let's invest. Let's do something, you know. It's a journey. It's wonderful. And I don't want to miss it. That's the only thing that I feel about dying. Of course, I don't want to get sick and suffer.
Right, sure.
I'd like to,
That sucks
just
too.
collapse right here.
Well,
and that's it.
You know, that's funny because we've talked about that too. Like Joe Williams, who is a singer.
I love him.
I love him too. And you told me how he was just walking down the street in Vegas.
Las Vegas, right.
And just
died.
blinked out and died.
Amazing.
And you were like, awesome. That's the way I want to do it. I'm like, don't do it. Like, give me a chance
but that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's hard for the people who are left, but
Sure.
for the person themselves, nothing could be more wonderful.
It's funny because I think I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, I would want time to like think about things and like consider everything that's happening. Like, there's this I can't remember his name. I think it's Andrew Sachs, something like that. But he's a writer for either the New York Times or the New Yorker. Mm-hmm. Very intelligent writer. And he was diagnosed with incurable terminal cancer maybe a month or two ago. And he wrote this really awesome thing about it where he was saying, gosh, I wish I could remember the exact wording, but it's basically like more than anything, I've had I've gotten to be a thinking animal on this beautiful planet, which in itself has been an enormous privilege and adventure.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is the coolest way I could ever think
You know
about
who
it.
said something similar to that was Paul Newman.
Yeah. Oh, you loved him.
Well, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I love his
He was a very
dressing.
intelligent man. Very. You loved his what?
His dressing. And his cookies.
Very good.
Sorry, go on, please.
He almost, his last words, from what I read, of course, Hollywood is involved in all this. It could be anything.
Sure.
But he said something about, thank you for having been given the privilege of living
Yeah.
in this wonderful life.
Yeah.
You know? And that's the way he went out.
It's cool to see the parallel too between your dad and Pop, because Pop had the same thing, right? He got to mid-50s, and even though, I mean, in a sense, left an enormous amount of money on the table so he could enjoy his life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
exactly.
oh well, we didn't even talk about what Pop did.
Yeah, right.
How about that? He
Right.
just changed the world. Whatever.
Right.
No big deal. So,
Yeah.
so I think it's better if you tell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let me see. Pop worked for other people, and he was a chemist. And he was mistreated, partially because he was Jewish. He had applied for a job.
Because he was Jewish?
Yes.
Really?
He had applied for a job, one of the big chemical companies.
Like Pfizer or something like
And
that?
he had been hired. And then when he went there, they said there had been some mistake and the job wasn't open.
Because his name was Schwartz?
Right.
Get out of here.
Exactly.
Wow,
Later,
I've never dealt with that.
Later, that company was taken over by, it wasn't taken over, the president of that company was a Jewish man and made a very big success
Right.
of that business. But at the time, there was an awful lot of anti-Semitism.
Sure. This is the 40s?
This is the 40s, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's anti-Semitism going on here while concentration camps in World War II was going on across the ocean?
Yeah, there's always anti-Semitism.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm sure you're
if
right.
something goes wrong, I mean, who are you going to pick on? A strong fella? You're going to pick on the weakest
Yeah,
link.
the small group.
There are so few Jews, you know, that
Sure.
they're always the ones that are the cause of everything, you
Yeah.
know. It was very bad. And he said, Bernie,
Mm-hmm.
he said, if I ever get into a position where I have power over other people, I will never treat them like I have been treated
Right.
and so forth.
He was such a good guy.
Okay. So he worked, and then he met Dick Berman,
Mm-hmm.
and they worked for this company, and they were developing medical instruments. And they decided that why couldn't they do it for themselves?
Right.
And they went into business for themselves. Well, Pop one day came up with, they had a device. It was a cardiogram,
Mm-hmm.
cardiogram being a picture of the heart,
Yeah.
you know, in action. Well, years ago, when you went to the doctor and he wanted to see how your heart was doing, he would put you on a stationary bicycle, you'd pedal,
Right.
and then you would get off, lie down on the table, he would put electrodes on your body
Mm-hmm.
and take your EKG.
Right.
Well, from the time that you stopped pedaling till the electrodes went on,
Sure.
whatever was happening, if you didn't have a good heart, whatever was happening while you were exercising, they couldn't record and they didn't know what was happening.
Right.
Well, Pop came up with the idea of this paste-on electrode,
Right.
which allowed the EKG to be taken while you were in motion. Before, you had to lie down like this, don't move, and so forth, you
Right.
see. But the point was, you wanted to know the action of the heart while you were moving and while you were doing things.
So the sticky pads
The
that
sticky
attach
pad- that-
wires to the human body
Right.
that every hospital in the world uses was Pop's idea.
Exactly. Was Pop's idea.
So
He
crazy.
got the patent on it. We have the patent hanging on the wall.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's nothing says more about Pop than this.
Yeah.
The fact that I was 24 years old before I even knew that.
Yeah.
And the only way I found out about it was because I found the patent. And I was like, what the hell is this? And then reluctantly, he mentioned that he created something that has probably saved, what, 1 billion lives?
Oh, sure.
I mean,
When you
seventh
watch
of the
television, you always see them sticking the electrodes on the people. Was Pop's idea when he was in the hospital,
isn't that crazy?
when he was almost dying.
Yeah.
It was at that time. It seems that those electrodes are in every hospital room on the little bulletin board that they have there.
Mm-hmm.
With a few pins in. So in case someone goes into cardiac arrest or something, the equipment is right there to do the thing.
Yeah.
So, of course, I was very proud of my husband. I loved everything that he
Right.
accomplished, And I was going to tell the nurse, there's your electrodes pinned to the wall there, He would say, don't say anything.
I mean, that...
Don't say anything.
It's just, I mean, like, it's a testament to who he was.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wish, in a sense, that he reveled in it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because, like, I find it absurd that I get the amount of recognition and love for dancing around in spandex and singing
Yeah.
songs about dicks.
Yeah.
And he saved lives.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
everyone who will ever watch this knows somebody, at least maybe
Of
5
course,
people,
of
whose
course.
lives were saved because of his invention.
Definitely.
And he just refused to take any credit for it.
Yeah.
He, more than any other person, like, provided the blueprint for my life, as far as, like, the type of, I hate morals. I hate the word morals,
Yeah.
but you know what
Yeah.
I mean. Like,
Right.
the type of person I
That's
want
the
to be.
standard.
Right. Like, because he just such a selfless guy, and like he and he always devoted his time. I was so lucky, man. Like I didn't realize it as a kid. I mean, I knew I loved you guys, but
Yeah.
I didn't realize how many other kids don't get the love and attention that Dana and I had. You know,
Right.
like Pop would take us down to Millburn and catch crayfish and stuff, and
Right.
so cool. And he must have been in his early 60s when he was doing that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And being in my mid 30s and knowing how I don't want to get out of bed 9 out of 10 times, but the fact that he would do it and spend all day with us and be like so patient with answering what had to be the dumbest questions any human being has
Not
ever heard.
really. Anybody who loves children, their
Right.
grandchildren, their own children, they're happy to take the time to explain, and particularly grandparents, simply because they don't have the stress and the strain of working and trying to bring up a family and all of the things that go along with that. Your time is free. What's better than your grandchildren? I
Yeah.
mean, there's nothing better.
I don't know. I might never know, Mom. I gotta tell you, it seems up in the air for me now. But I'm glad. Well, here's the cool thing. I was afraid that when Dana had Nash and Carter, that I was like, I'm in trouble, because now Debbie and Avi are going to be like, where are your where are the grandkids from your side? And instead, it was the total opposite. It totally took the pressure off.
Really?
It was like,
Yeah.
we've got grandkids. They're awesome. We love them. You do whatever thing.
It's funny, your mother had the same sort of reaction when she married Avi. She said to me one day, "Am I under any pressure to have children.
Right.
You know, I said, I don't care. It's your life. I mean,
Right.
you want children, have them. If you don't, you don't. You know, but nobody can tell you what to do.
Right.
I would say to you that if you don't have children, you miss a great experience.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And then when you have grandchildren, it's over the top. Over the top.
Really, if nothing else, I should have children just to get to the
grandchildren.
grandchildren stage. Yeah, that's when the real good stuff begins. It's amazing too, like, because I remember Avi, who never uses language like this, but when Dana said she was pregnant, he was like, it's like a miracle, like and I've. Can you imagine Avi saying those words?
No,
it's so out of character for him.
Right.
But that when he found out about Nash, that's what he said, and that was an emotional time too, because either Pop was very sick or he had just died, and when Nash was born, I remember, because I mean it's 5 years down the road, and I'm probably still not over Pop, you know.
None of us are.
Yeah, he was irreplaceable.
Right.
And I think to lose someone like that and then immediately witness the first baby being born,
right.
that like is my blood, you know, and like experience that feeling of like, I don't even know who you are, but I love you.
Right.
You know, which is something I'd seen a million babies, and I was like, "It's a baby. What's the big deal?" You know. So I think to have those two experiences back to back, like in that moment, like I had to leave the room. I don't know if I ever told anyone this, but like they had 2 vending machines in the hospital, and you know we had family over here and family over here, and there's nowhere for me to go, and I'm about to lose it. And so I just like ducked between the 2 vending machines and just cried my eyes out for like 10 minutes, like what Oprah calls the ugly cry, like the like the deep sobs.
Right.
And like I haven't cried like that since I was like a little kid, you know. 'Cause even when I am crying, like I'll just let tears run. You know, I'll never let my face crumple. There's some kind of like thing that inside me that like stops me before that point. But at that point, it was just like, you got to do this, or I'm not. It was a strange experience, and then it's just to see you with Nash and Carter is really cool.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's an 86-year difference between you and Carter.
Right.
You know, and the fact that you get to spend time together and enjoy each other's company.
Well, this is similar to when my mother was alive. And you were alive.
Yeah.
And we would go out, and we were 4 generations, which was lovely.
I mean, I certainly wish I could have gotten my act together 5 years earlier so he could have seen this.
Yeah, it would have certainly been wonderful. But it didn't work that way. It had to work the way it did work. And every day led to the next day and the next accomplishment, and that's the way it is.
Well, that's the funny thing, because, like, logically I know that if I'd started 5 years earlier, I wouldn't have met Brian.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have met Aaron. Like, things wouldn't have intersected the same way, but it's still a regret of mine.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like maybe something would have happened where he could have seen his, like, faith get, like, more rewarded, you know?
He didn't see it actually happen, but he knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah, I guess so.
He was too hard-nosed a businessman to think in terms of, well, maybe, you know, we'll be lucky. How many people really do make it in this field? I mean, there are plenty.
I'm very fortunate.
Many people who are even more talented than those who have really made, millions and millions of dollars. But it didn't happen.
Without question.
He somehow, there was something about your approach to what you were doing the enthusiasm, but it was your voice. He knew your voice. See, I don't have an ear like that. Your mother does.
Right.
And Bernie did.
And Tilly did too.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
She used to whistle like
Yeah.
great. It was amazing.
Unreal,
Yeah,
unreal, yeah.
She could, if there were competitive whistling tournaments.
Right.
Grandma
She
Tilly would
was
have cleaned
wonderful.
up.
She
Yeah.
was like those birds who kept us up last.
Yeah. Oh my God, Aaron, we're trying to go to sleep.
Yeah.
There are these birds like they're singing outside all night, and it was amazing how fast it went from like, oh, isn't nature magical, to like, get me a fucking shotgun. I'm gonna take these things out. But yeah, that's really cool. Like, I'm just glad like I had like the role models I had, and even hearing stuff about Lou, who I never knew, like that story you were telling me about when Tilly wanted a fridge.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, can you tell me that one?
Oh, God, it makes me cry.
Oh, good. I'll cry too. It's fine. This is a safe place.
It was the early 30s, and things apparently were tough. We never suffered because my father was always manufacturing, so he was in business. He was a boss.
Right.
We lived in a 4-family house. It's one house divided into 2 apartments downstairs and 2 apartments upstairs. And the people who lived upstairs had very little money. And all they ate was potatoes. Potatoes. Those were the Tenenbaums. I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about them. There were 4 boys, and they were a very nice family. And we had an icebox in those days,
Right.
and refrigerators came out, which were electric, but they cost money. And my mother said she'd like to have a refrigerator. And as I say, we weren't suffering. We were
Right.
just normally eating and doing our thing, And my father said that not until the Tenenbaums can eat other things than potatoes will I buy you a refrigerator, because you can't do that to people. And that's the way he was.
What an amazing guy.
Yeah.
Well, I do remember when I visited her in her 80s, she had a fridge. So at some point,
It was a few years later, things got better for people in general. And then he bought, a refrigerator.
do you know what became of them? The
Oh,
Tenenbaums?
sure. Oh, yeah, we was always friendly with them. There were 4 boys. Jerome was the youngest, and he was a little younger than I. And let's say if he was 6, I was 7 or 8, maybe. And every night I used to go up to their apartment, and Jerome and I would sit in the corner of the kitchen. There must have been a pipe behind the tile walls
Right.
that was carried hot water or something. And we used to sit in that corner because it was very warm.
Right.
And I would teach him to read.
No kidding.
Well, he became a school teacher.
Get out of here.
He was a gym teacher at Irvington High School.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Was Irvington a nicer place at the time?
Irvington, and than it is now. I think it's the murder capital of the world.
It's certainly, it's certainly a good place to avoid if you're in New Jersey.
No, at the time it was okay.
Yeah. So
Very
I'm
nice.
sorry, I'm leaking. This is an emotional conversation.
Yeah, right.
So things worked out for them. They eventually.
Yes, they did.
Wow.
Poor people came out of. Of course, they were hard workers. It's
Yeah.
just there was no money.
Wow.
Potatoes.
That's amazing. And that was the beginning of the Great Depression, or kind of in the middle.
That was. Well, the Depression was the early 30s.
Right.
When Roosevelt got elected in 1932, I believe.
Right.
He was the only president I knew till he died. I was about 18 or 19.
Wow.
I mean, and you know how some people, of course, hated him like they hate now Obama now.
Sure, sure.
But still, Roosevelt was a fantastic politician, and he would get on the radio and talk to my friends,
Right.
and everybody felt he was their father, their uncle, their cousin.
Wow.
It was a very close feeling.
Was he the one who did the fireside chats?
Yeah,
That was him.
Yeah, that was him.
So it feels like even in my lifetime, the reverence for the office of president has come down a lot.
Diminished.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because I feel like Reagan was the first president I remember,
Uh-huh.
and granted there were a lot of people who didn't like Reagan. Specifically like musicians, and like punk rock was very against Reagan. But overall, it felt like when the president did something
Right.
or said something, you listened.
It was the office. See, they respected the office of the president. Today, they don't respect the guy in the position.
Right.
And they don't respect the office of the president.
Right.
You have to treat Obama like the president. I mean, this is extremely prestigious in the world,
Right, regardless of your personal feelings for him.
Exactly. But they've lost that.
When do you think that happened?
When did that happen? Well, this is the worst that I ever remember. I never saw such disrespect
Oh, sure.
in my life.
I mean, he has a totally new set of challenges, too, that just didn't exist when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like the immediacy of information, the ability for everyone to get their opinion out and broadcast it widely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think part of it was because when the president said something when I was a kid, they would say something, it's out there, and if someone wanted to craft a response, it would take a week, or it would appear in the paper the next morning. Now, no matter who's in office, they give the State of the Union, and as they're giving the State of the Union, people are tweeting, "This is bullshit. He's lying."
Exactly.
How do you get anything done?
24-hour news is a horrible thing.
I agree.
Because they have to fill up 24 hours with the same news, so you get these people critiquing from all sides.
Right.
Half of them, they just have to get it out. It isn't necessarily true.
Sure.
So now you don't trust anybody.
Right.
We have become very distrustful of the powers that be. Even teachers. When I was a kid, if a teacher said something, it was gospel.
Right.
Nobody argued with the teacher.
Right.
Today, if the teacher gives a child an F, and the child may deserve it,
Right.
the parents are in there arguing.
No way, my genius
have
child got an F. No, your kid's probably
right.
annoying and stupid.
There's no more respect.
Right.
And that's a difficulty.
It's interesting. But the reason I brought that up was because back in the Roosevelt days and the Kennedy days probably too, there was a reverence. Right. Like it was beyond that.
Well, part of it is also naivete.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we're much more sophisticated than we were certainly years ago.
I'm sure Nixon threw the country for a loop too.
Yeah, definitely. Kennedy didn't do a bad job either.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Or Clinton, who I adore.
Right.
You
mean because of the affairs?
Yeah, because of his affairs.
Right. And Kennedy, the affairs. That's what you mean there as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's very strange because with YouTube I get to see things that I've never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, growing up, I guess just because it's human nature, if you look up John F. Kennedy, the video of him getting assassinated has millions upon millions of views. but the videos of him actually being president and giving speeches and saying what he was actually about,
Right.
100,000, if that. There's less interest in who he was and more interest in how he died. And his speeches were awesome.
Awesome.
I mean, he's saying things that apply directly to what's going on now, and they're 50 years old.
Right.
And with the Nixon stuff, talking about Watergate, I see him giving this press conference, and he's like, the people of America deserve to know if their president is a crook. And I am not a crook.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's
terrible.
That must have been.
Right.
I mean, was it all anybody could talk about?
Maybe, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have been the death of innocence.
For this country, at least,
Yeah.
And when that happened, did you know right off the bat that he was guilty? Or did people have a sense, or could they not want to believe
When
it?
it first happened, there was a piece in the newspaper that must have been this big, and somehow or other I saw it.
Right.
And I thought, how horrible. I was floored by it.
Right.
But there was not much talk about it. And I remember Dick Berman, who I told you about my solitaire playing.
Oh, right.
And I was talking to him and told him about it. He was unaware of it, and there wasn't much in the newspaper. And then it gathered momentum.
Really?
But I happened to, it was just a matter of, I don't know why I picked up that newspaper.
Yeah.
That I saw that the break-in had occurred. And it gradually.
Right. Unfortunately, the conclusion I've had to come to is that, I mean, like we were talking about last night, like any group of people, political party, otherwise, anything, you have your cool people and you have your assholes.
Right.
And so to break it down as the Democrats are good and the Republicans are bad, or vice versa, it's a fool's errand because, there's plenty of assholes to go around.
It's too simple. It's ridiculous. But for me to have come to this point from my life was politics, and now it's laughable.
You've caught what Aaron and I refer to as a case of the fuckets, where you're just like, fuck it.
That's very good.
Yeah, it's a real condition, and it's very healthy for you.
It can't be a condition that I take back to the East Coast.
Yeah, of course.
My friends heard me say that.
I wanted to ask you, just talking about history and stuff, I wanted to ask you about World War II, because I remember one time I asked you if you were ever scared that Hitler might win, or that the Germans might win, or if anyone was. And the answer was no.
I don't think so, no.
Really?
No. Although, when you look back upon...
He was doing pretty well for a while there.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Scary.
I mean, we were kind of like, well, America is so wonderful, how could it lose? That kind of thing.
Right.
No, as a child, I wasn't frightened.
Wow.
Although I was of the generation that they taught to get under the desk at school. I mean, how stupid that is, but that was the way
desks
people
are impervious
thought.
to nuclear blasts, Mom. I have good news for you. Wooden writing desks. That's amazing.
Unbelievable.
Well, because we still, even in the 80s when I was a little kid, we still had the signs, like, over the basement of, like, Caldwell, radioactive fallout shelter, come down here.
Right.
So, I mean, and I never put it together that those were holdovers from a time when that could actually happen.
Right.
I just thought they were signs.
Right, yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah.
But, like, but you had an uncle.
Who died.
Yeah.
Right.
Did he at Normandy?
No, not at Normandy. He died, I think, at Anzio Beachhead.
Okay.
Italy.
Italy, yeah.
Italy, yeah.
And it was weird, too, because I saw his grave for the first time about a year ago. And, from when you were telling me about him when I was a little kid, I was like, oh, he was a grown-up. He was an adult. 33. 3 years younger than I am now.
Right.
That, I mean, like, and granted, like, if you tell a kid a person's 33, they think that's an
Yeah,
adult.
I'm ready to die.
Right,
Because I remember being asked the question when I was a little kid,
right.
when do you think you want to die? I said, oh, well, when I'm 40. So I've more than doubled it.
Yeah, way to go. Way to beat your own odds. I mean, that's incredible because like, yeah, so, I mean, the same thing happened to me with I know he didn't mean as much to your generation, but Kurt Cobain was it's strange to say this, but it's true. Kurt Cobain dying, 9/11, and Pop dying are the only 3 times in my life that I felt that way. You know, that something hit me that hard, and Kurt Cobain was the first. It's really interesting how. I mean, it must have been the same for you with Kennedy. You know, just like
I was so devastated.
yeah, just someone who meant so much.
I still cry whenever they do a rerun. I don't know if I'm programmed to cry because of the experience that I lived through with it happening.
Right.
But there's not a time. Now, it doesn't happen with Bobby. I mean, I felt sorry and everything.
Sure.
But John, devastated. I still cry.
Really.
Still cry.
And this is the kind of stuff that they teach you in school when you're a kid, and you're like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's not the right age to teach that kind of thing.
That educational system has to be
tweaked, shall we say?
redone.
Yeah, but
Because you have to make not only learning something like that, you're not interested in it, but you have to make decisions that govern the rest of your life.
oh, you mean with like choosing a college major?
When
and-
you're 16, I mean,
yeah,
it's foolish.
I mean, I went to college for advertising because Avi would not let me go to college for music. And then when I almost failed out of school my first year because I was so bored and uninterested and going through other stuff, I wanted to transfer to Emerson. But by then my grades were so terrible, I couldn't transfer. So I just had to stick it out with advertising. And in retrospect, I'm glad it happened because learning advertising opened my eyes to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But my God, I don't think there's a subject I could possibly hate more than advertising.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. But
well, I think the idea was that you were so clever with words.
oh,
you know,
well, yeah, that's what my guidance counselor said. Like, you're creative, which was flattering at the time and made sense. But like in retrospect, why would I want to use that creativity to make people feel like shit about themselves?
Yeah.
You know, and break down their
look what's
self-opinions.
going on in the world. You would want to do it because you would want to make a lot of money.
Right.
And money is the end of whatever you do.
Yeah.
The goal is to get the most money.
Have you ever heard of Patrice O'Neill?
I don't think so.
He's a comedian who you would have liked a lot. He died young, but he was a very, very cool comedian. And one of the things he talked about was making a living as a comedian and how if you make every dollar you make doing what you love is worth 1,000 square dollars, meaning, you know, if you lived your life as a square working in a corporation for something that you don't care about or hate, it's 1/1000th as important as $1 that you make. You know,
well, try to get that point across to people you know.
Right.
You know, impossible.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I had the one parent, Debbie, who would have supported me if I had told her, I'm going to just punch people for a living. Like, that's what I love. That's what I want to do. And Avi, on the other
And how
hand,
about Grandma?
Grandma, of course.
I would
Yeah, you're
support her
exactly.
too.
Well, yeah. I'm just talking parents here. But yeah, and Avi is exactly the opposite.
Right.
He's completely about the bottom line.
Right.
Like, how much money does it make? How are you going to survive?
Right.
And I needed to hear that too, because it's a very valid question. And in the ultra dark, scary financial days of my mid to late 20s, where I just had to keep going back to them with my tail between my legs and saying, can I stay here a little bit longer? Or can you help me out a little bit more? And I hated it. But the fact that the fact that he supported me through that, like when he didn't even understand it.
That's the point, you see. And you really have to understand him,
Right.
because Debbie came from a privileged background. She didn't know strife.
Right.
She didn't know anything close to what he experienced living in a brand new country.
Right.
You could walk out of your door and be killed, you
Right.
know. So you're coming from two different places. So you can't really blame him. And he was good to support, you know, you were still his son.
Right.
And he didn't throw you out.
It meant as much, if not more, you know, the
yeah.
fact that he would stick it out with me,
Right.
Even though it was against everything in his nature.
Everything, right.
Yeah,
right.
and now, of course, that like the flip happened, he's flipped with it,
Oh.
and now he's the most into it of anybody.
He is so funny.
Yeah.
He is so funny. He is so proud of you.
It's awesome. It's a huge relief.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's a good guy. Let's say Nash and Carter are watching this 10 years from now,
Right.
20 years from now. Is there any message you would have for them?
That I wish they were physically closer, so that I could have had the relationship with them that I was able to have with you. With you and your sister, I had the same relationship as I had with my own children, only better.
Definitely.
Yeah, and we lived in the same houses.
Yeah.
And it was a boy and girl in each case. That now, when I try to remember something that happened, I no longer can remember if it happened with my children or with my grandchildren.
Right.
Because with you and Dana, I was able to actually relive my life.
Yeah.
It was the same episodes going on. And
they were worth the reruns.
It was great. It was great.
I kind of know what you mean. Like the fact that, I mean, I don't have kids, but like doing the Game Grumps show with so many kids watching who are in some cases 25 years younger than me, you know, like I get to share with them all the stuff I loved in the 80s and the 90s, you know, and like really get to share it with them because like it's the actual games that I was playing and I get to play them and explain why it was so cool at the time. It means a lot, you know?
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Because I probably wouldn't sit there and just play the games again by myself.
Yeah.
But it feels new because you're sharing it.
Right.
It's awesome.
But I do love Dada's children. They're marvelous.
They're awesome.
And every time Debbie goes there, which is about once a week, she immediately calls me and tells me what they said and what they did and how cute they are. And so I do get a lot of enjoyment, but unfortunately not as much as I would have liked. Yeah.
It would never be enough.
No.
You know?
True.
And
I was fortunate to have it with you and Dana.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an unusual situation. In years gone by, when grandparents used to live with their children, you know, that was different. But here we are, two separate entities, and yet I was able to almost relive the same experiences with you.
Well, we lived only a couple blocks away, which was awesome.
Right.
Because even before I had a car, I could just either walk or bike.
Right.
And when I went to Gardner, you were right on the way to my school.
Right.
You know, so
right.
it was great. And once I learned to cut through that guy's lawn who hated me cutting through his lawn, it was like a dream.
You were right there.
But so yeah, it I don't know. I guess that's really all I wanted to say and to talk about, other than to just say that, you know, I mean, you know this, I don't have to say it. Like, I love you more than anything. And and I'm so lucky to have you as a grandma, and I'm glad you're still around. And is it okay to talk about our deal about Kennedy?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely,
so,
of course.
Mom has a deal with me. You've always wanted to know who killed Kennedy. Was it, you know, a government conspiracy or something like that? And apparently the classified files of everything are going to go public in 2029.
Correct.
Because everyone who will have been involved will be dead by then. So it's 2015. It's March of 2015 when we're recording this, and you will. So it's 14 years from now.
Right.
So you just have to make it to 102.
I'm
No
trying.
problem.
I'm trying.
Eat those vitamins, Mom. That folic acid.
Absolutely. I'm going to double the dosage.
Please do. And thanks for doing this, Mom. It was awesome.
It was wonderful. And you're an awesome fellow. I
Yeah.
love you.
Oh, that's it. I heard something in your hearing aid. It was like, wow.
Whoa,
Yeah.
whoa.
Is that normal?
Oh, well, yeah, when you push it, you get a sound.
Okay, cool. I hope that didn't like
Because
explode your brain.
I don't get any sound when you don't push it. So
Everything else is just.
it's just going, right?
Oh man,
Just
awesome.
going. Okay.
We're
and
good.
thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and that was the coolest.